Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Latshaw, and I'm the marketing manager here at CTI. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar on surviving a phishing attack, how to weed out hackers in real time, which is a co-presentation between Consolidated Technologies, Inc. and SKOUT Cybersecurity. So now, without further ado, I turn the presentation over to CTI's Chief Customer Officer, Ben Schoolsky. Ben?
Thank you, Michael. And welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar on surviving a phishing attack, how to weed out hackers in real time, presented by CTI Consolidated Technologies and our partner SKOUT Cybersecurity. I am Ben Schoolsky. I am the Chief Customer Officer of CTI. Joining me today from CTI is Paul Thompson, our Senior Solutions Architect, and from SKOUT Cybersecurity, we have Steven Arcoleo, who is Vice President of Sales, along with Kevin Williams, who is the Sales Engineer. All of us have experience in the business supporting end users up through the executives in the boardroom. Additionally, several of us have had the ability to make decisions as executives in the boardroom, which gives us a well-rounded experience in many areas. A little bit about CTI. We've been in business for 25 years, partnering, protecting, and growing with our customers. Our goal is to bring best-in-breed services and technologies to our customers. We want to be sure that we're vetting the technologies, making sure that they're leading edge, that they serve our customers' purposes, they solve business problems. Ideally, there's some return on investment. And that is how we go about making sure that continually we are a value-added partner. Back in 2007, CTI built and operated our own cloud platform. We were a pioneer. We were a provider. What we realized when we got out of that business in 2011 was there was a big difference between being a trusted advisor and a provider. And we always were and wanted to continue to be a trusted advisor, where we began and continued to focus on UCaaS, IT managed services, and cybersecurity. A little bit about SKOUT. SKOUT is a nationally recognized partner for SMBs across the country. They are a US-based organization with 24/7, 365 security operations center. The value that they bring to customers and MSPs like CTI is they offer a single dashboard with a single number to call, and they're a turnkey partner. They have the technical security experts that are the additional eyes assuring that they're protecting the businesses. They have a comprehensive suite of products that includes log security monitoring, network security monitoring, Office 365, email, and Endpoint. And these are just some of the reasons why CTI chose SKOUT to be our partner, to be the eyes behind the mirror, as opposed to many of the other good providers out there. To jump into it, I am going to ask Steve a question. How did or why did SKOUT get started in the cybersecurity business? And what is SKOUT and what do you see in the industry today?
Sure. So thanks, Ben. When we started SKOUT 7 years ago, we looked across the cyber landscape, and one thing became very apparent, and that was that there was a tremendous shortage of trained cybersecurity professionals that a small or medium-sized business could access to help prevent them from falling prey to a cyber attack. And here we are, fast forward 7 years, and if anything, the shortage of talent has grown worse. So, depending on which organization you look at that tracks the cybersecurity industry, globally there's over almost 3.5 million unfulfilled positions next year in cybersecurity. So again, that gap in trained professionals versus the need continues to grow. And how that affects a small and medium-sized business really is they don't have access. Any talent that's out there is quickly scooped up by Fortune 1000 companies or government agencies. And so really, the only way for a small or medium-sized business to gain access to this talent is to work with a third-party provider like CTI, who can provide the talent, the knowledge, the people, the process, and the technologies to protect small and medium-sized business. Make sense, Ben?
Makes more than sense, because as a microcosm, CTI does not go out and hire and find its own security experts. We believe in having a third party because it is expensive to have the resources, the SOC, and the ability to get those resources. So we agree as a business, it's that much more difficult for end users. We have certainly seen a lot of changes over the years, Steve, from threats, whether it was on one end or the other. What are some of the major attacks that you're seeing today in the marketplace?
Great question, Ben. So over the last 12 to 18 months, we've seen a dramatic increase in business email compromise. So what that means to the average user is these attacks typically take the form of a wire fraud attempt, which Kevin will be speaking about in a couple of minutes. And the other big area we've seen a tremendous uptick in, and we all hear about it pretty much on a daily basis, is ransomware attacks, where a hacker will go in and lock up your critical data and then ask you for a ransom. So those are the two big areas we're seeing increases in. And if you look at, again, across the industry for those organizations that track this information, both those, the business email compromise and ransomware, typically involve a hacker not only gaining access to your network, but on average, they're typically inside your network for 197 days. And so as a result, unless you have someone watching your network, they can actually damage your organization severely. So that's what we're seeing across the cyber landscape right now.
Thanks, Steve. And one of the things that we're doing regularly today is speaking with our customers about security. That's one of the hottest topics. Kevin, could you show us what it looks like for a customer when there is a phishing attack?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Kevin.
So ultimately here, what we've got is the perspective of an attacker, right? So on the left-hand side, we've got the tool that the attacker uses to actually gain the credentials or send out a link to gain the credentials of someone's actual account, right? And there are lots of different things that the attacker would have access to in this tool. So Facebook, Instagram, Google. In this example, we're going to actually, show you what it looks like for them to actually generate a Microsoft link. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the email set up as the attacker. And we're going to actually embed this link specifically into where you see verify your identity. And we're going to send that out just to show you exactly what the attacker would do in this type of an instance. So first, we're going to select Microsoft.
So I just want to clarify for a moment, Kevin. You are showing now what the hacker's screen looks like when they begin the process to dupe the victim or the end user. So you're on the left is the hacker, correct, and on the right is the email the hacker's going to send to the victim.
Correct. And ultimately, once the link is generated, I go ahead and grab this. I go ahead and copy it over and embed it within where it says verify your identity. And once we go ahead and embed that, we go ahead and send it off, right? And so it's now, once it's sent, and now it's really a matter of the user from the victim's perspective, actually getting that email. So now we're switching gears and now showing exactly what the victim would see from their inbox. And so here's that email that we had just generated. And as you could tell, ultimately, we have the fact that you've got the email looking just like what you would get from Microsoft. You've got the link embedded. It's letting you know very quickly. If you're not necessarily paying attention to it, you're going to think, oh my goodness, someone's accessed my account. Let me go ahead and verify my credentials just like they're asking. And so in the act of doing this, that's where you're falling prey to exactly what the attacker wants. So I'm going to go ahead and put in those credentials based off of what I got from supposedly Microsoft. And in the act of doing this, unbeknownst to the victim, you're actually sending those credentials off to the attacker. So once you've actually, signed in according to what this is saying, we'll switch gears, head back to the attacker. And as you can see, those credentials have been grabbed. So I have the account, the email address, I have the password, and ultimately, it's a matter of testing, because it's not just a matter of accessing. You have to test to make sure that you can actually get in, from the attacker's perspective, of course. So we're going to go ahead and copy over this email and copy over the password. And once we have that, we have to verify that we have connectivity. And it's true that the credentials were accurate, and we're going to go ahead and gain access. But beyond gaining access, there's another step to it. And you really want to go ahead and establish what those rules are going to be in place so that you can get the information out and over to your personal inbox, right? So I'm going to go ahead and set up some rules.
Kevin, I have a question for you. So what you did was the user put in their credentials, the hacker got the notification within their tool, they logged in as the user, and now you as the hacker went into the user's account, and now you're going to do some damage.
Exactly, because at this point, we're targeting specific information as the attacker, right? So I want to go ahead and set up a rule in place and disguise it as something that the user wouldn't even think to question, right? So ultimately, the name of the rule has to be something that no one's going to question. Then you have to set up the parameters of that rule as far as what specific information you're looking for from the email, and ultimately what email you want to send it out to, right? So just running it right through, the first thing I want to name it as is something inconspicuous, right? So admin's a good start. Let me just stretch this out. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and look for specifics within the email, right? So any type of subject that's including finances, right? So in this case, we're going to try wire transfer. And lastly, we want to make sure that anything with that subject gets specifically sent to the attacker's AOL account, because we want to make sure that, again, it's a rule that's hidden as an admin supposedly, but ultimately we want to make sure that all of those emails, in the event that the user changes their password, still get sent over to the attacker. So once this is in place and we save it, as the attacker, this is the part where they're patient and they wait. It could happen in a minute. It could happen in a few days. Ultimately, it's a matter of waiting for that email to go through, and once it does, you're able to see very quickly that not only does it appear where the victim gets it with the actual instructions for the wire transfer, but when we switch over and actually refresh the AOL account, you'll see very quickly that it's the exact same email forwarded over with the wire transfer instructions there. And ultimately, we've gotten all the information that we need to do all the damage that we'd like to from the perspective of the attacker. And unbeknownst to the victim, they had no idea it happened.
It's pretty incredible. You showed us how easy it is for the hacker to get the information. Can you show us how easy it could be for the end user to be protected?
Oh, absolutely. So in this case, what we'll go ahead and show is exactly what it looks like from that same user. But in this case, we're going to show it what it looks like with email protection in place. So ultimately, let me go ahead and share my screen. And so what I've got here is, the VM with the user account in place. The email has been received. The difference, though, is that email protection is in place. So the first thing that you're going to notice is that your user sees a red banner. And this red banner indicates exactly what the threat is, right? So we're identifying that even though this is saying it's coming from the Microsoft security team, when the email protection has identified that it's not coming from Microsoft directly. There's brand impersonation at play, so your user has the ability to actually identify the threat just by reading the banner itself. But if we go beyond that, let's say that either unintentionally or intentionally the link is clicked that's embedded within the email. Email protection will actually go ahead and rewrite that link and show your user basically a screenshot of the end destination. So in this case, because we've identified it as a red banner, your user doesn't have the ability to proceed past this page. So it's more of an educational tool than it is anything else, because not only are you seeing the threat, but you're not able to actually interact with it and make the mistake of giving those credentials away and really giving the hackers what they're looking for. So in this case, it's not only something that prevents a phishing attack or malicious emails, but ultimately, your users are a part of the security equation and are learning along the way.
Thank you for that, Kevin. It goes to show that it is easy for a user to make a mistake because users are busy and they have a lot of things going on, and the hackers are smart and they know that. The security provides them the safety net of not needing to be worried about any email that comes in that could be false. Paul, I know you spend a lot of time speaking with our customers about security. Could you tell us some of the other things that you're seeing in the marketplace as concerns for customers?
Absolutely, Ben. I'm going to go through a use case. After a network was compromised with ransomware and thousands of company-sensitive files along with operating system and application system files were locked across hundreds of laptops, desktops, and servers, CTI was referred by a partner to engage in incident response, also referred to as IR, which was performed by a combination of remote and on-site level 2 and level 3 CTI engineers working around the clock. The standard IR process consists of preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. During the identification process, we discovered that the traditional signature-based antivirus service, which was not up to date, did not detect nor protect against the threat, which was caused by an end user clicking on a malicious file. We were able to contain the propagation and eradicate using a combination of tools that scan the desktops, laptops, and servers for the threat. During the recovery process, re-imaging of endpoints was required in order to ensure we had a baseline end-user computing environment going forward. Manual server rebuilds were also performed. Our team spent weeks focusing on getting customer back to a stable working state using the phased IR approach. We completed the process with lessons learned, where we focused on introducing layered security solutions in order to help prevent future attacks. This particular incident cost the customer $165,000 in recovery services and weeks of downtime for hundreds of users across multiple sites. And back to you, Ben.
Thanks, Paul. And I know one of the things that we're also very sensitive about, it's not just the money that it costs to remediate, but it could be the reputation damage to your organization. This happened to be a not-for-profit. They have donations. So a lot of companies, all companies have sensitive information we need to protect, and we want to minimize the risk to the folks that we communicate with. Kevin, would you be able to show us a ransomware example and how the hackers attack?
Sure. So in this example, I basically want to kind of go over how easy it is to fall for something like a ransomware attack. And it's nothing that is out of the norm, out of the blue. It's something that's actually, hidden in plain sight in certain cases. So in this VM, what we've got here is a normal desktop, right? So coming into the office every day, I see everything looks fine. Let me just go ahead and open up Google Chrome like I have in the past. Except in the
before you go any
action,
further, for someone like myself who always has to question everything, that's me on a Monday morning. I wake up, I come to the office, I log onto my machine, and now I am looking at my computer. I'm about to go onto the internet.
Correct. And in this case, in opening Chrome, that's where the damage is done, right? Ultimately, it looks like a normal desktop, but it's hidden within the Chrome actual extension. But the fact that the damage is already being done. So as we speak, the files are being locked up. Soon the wallpaper changes, and you get us with this specific variant instructions on what needs to be done next. Because ultimately, your user might not even know that a mistake was made up until these visual actions, really appear on screen. So ultimately, as you could see, slowly the files are being locked up, and you no longer have access to these files. And that's really where the victim sits there, kind of questioning, well, what happens next? Now, from the FBI perspective, they recommend to not ever pay hackers, simply because that really opens up the door for them to come back again. So in this case, what's happening is that the user really is instructed to go ahead, open up this specific file related to, the WannaCry variant. And it's specifically saying, hey, this is how much time you have left. This is the problem. And this is basically the way that we're looking for payment in order to get your files back. But once again, you're never guaranteed you're actually going to get your files after paying.
One of the things that we know through our remediation partner, that often the hackers will not have the keys to unlock the ransomware. They know the threat, but they don't have the keys because they weren't the ones who created it. So often customers pay hackers and they're not able to unlock their information. Kevin, could you show how easy it could be for us to protect an end user and an organization? Because we know it continues to go out throughout the organization once it starts on one machine.
Of course. So in this case, we're going to showcase what endpoint protection looks like in this specific VM. Ultimately, the goal here is to show how with the exact same environment, simply clicking on Chrome, endpoint protection can stop something like that in its tracks. So ultimately, if you see here, you've got the same Chrome extension set up within this VM, and the act of clicking it is where we made the mistake last time, right? And that's just normal behavior. So ultimately, when I click it with endpoint protection this time around, it's automatically blocked. It never got a chance to actually run. When we look at the system tray and see endpoint protection in action, you're able to tell that it was quarantined just like that. So it never gave your user a chance to, actually infect the machine. The variant never spread. There's no call at 4 or 5 in the morning letting you know that the entire network or all the machines have been encrypted. This is something that really stops the variant, or any for that matter, in their tracks, and really gets that user back to what they would consider a normal environment, simply because they really never left. Ultimately, because we're really in there preventing any type of application from executing prior to it even getting a chance to run.
And those notifications are sent to you and to us as the managed services provider, so we can act on them and behave on the customer's behalf. They can also be sent to you as the customer if you manage these items yourself. So there's access for you to know what's going on when there is a potential issue. At this point, I'm going to ask you, Steve, there is a lot of opportunity for hackers to get in. I know that the systems that we use are artificially intelligent. So for example, many customers think they might have semantic or antivirus, so I don't need the next level, but the next level is thinking ahead, and it has artificial intelligence. So as the hackers change, the software is thinking ahead and is able to know what's coming. It's not stale and stagnant, but that's not enough. Can you tell us what customers can do to best protect themselves from hackers?
Sure, and it's pretty basic. There are 5 things you need to do to be able to protect yourself against the breach. First thing is you want to establish what's important for you to protect most. So by way of an example, let's say if you're a healthcare provider, patient information is critically important. Or if you're a manufacturer of a product, there may be intellectual property around that product that if it's lost or stolen, it'll affect your brand and your reputation. And really any company needs to establish what they want to protect most. Even your employee records are valuable to a hacker. So any business always has data that you care about most, and you need to figure out what's important for you and put in a scheme to protect that information. Second thing, you want to build concentric rings around your data security profile. So as an example, just having a firewall doesn't do the trick anymore. Just having endpoint protection won't always work in every instance. So you have to put in a layered approach to cybersecurity so that if one application misses something, you have a backup. You have something else that could protect you against a cyber attack. Third thing is you want to monitor your network. You want to know if you have a problem. As we showed earlier on the slide, the hacker on average is in your network for 197 days. So you have to be able to monitor your system on a 24/7, 365 basis so that you always know if there's someone sitting in your system trying to damage your company. Fourth thing, you have to take response time down. So as Kevin indicated, if we could stop the problem in its tracks, that's the ideal situation. So if we can notify CTI that one of their customers has a problem in real time, it again prevents a lot of headaches, a lot of money, a lot of cost associated in fixing the problem. So the difference between having a problem and not having a problem is reducing downtime. And the last thing is you want to pick a framework that covers people, process, and technology within your organization. Even a small or medium-sized business has to do this. So, a lot of individuals on today's call are probably saying to themselves, okay, makes sense, I get it, but what do I do next? Well, What questions do I need to ask my IT team to see if I'm protected? How do I know if I have a problem? If you follow a framework like NIST, so NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, it'll give you a framework you could use to make sure that your company is putting in all the proper steps to prevent themselves from falling victim to a cyber attack. So, if they follow those 5 things, again, it'll eliminate 99% of the problems they could potentially have.
That's great, Steve. I appreciate it. One of the things we often say is that the tools may not necessarily stop the hacker, because the hacker can always find a way to get in. The goal is to identify the hacker as soon as possible so that they cannot cause damage into your network. Of course, we want to keep them out as best we can, but if they happen to get in, you want to be able to identify and not let them cause damage. The second comment I want to make on top of that is many customers will tell us they have a managed service provider and they do the security. And our position is that we do not believe that the fox should be watching the hen house. Our goal is to protect our customers and do the best job we can, but we, as most managed service providers, are not security experts. And we believe it's in our customers' best interests as well as our best interest to have an additional layer of security experts with the tools and the resources to make sure that we are putting into place the best practices to protect your business and to assure that if there is a breach, that we have security experts who are eyes on glass 24/7, 365 to identify them. And that to us is the most critical part of serving our customers, to protect you, identify, and put these threats at bay. At this point, how do you get started? What are the next steps? If you have a contact of any of us on this panel, please reach out to us directly. We are available, phone, email, social media. We will respond and answer any questions. If you have account representatives or sales professionals that you work with, please contact them. They know which resources to gather and can help you to move to the next level. If you are unsure who to contact, please reach out to mlachaw@consultech.com. We'll leave that up for a moment if you just want to take that down. If you email Michael, he will make sure that the proper folks get the information and we will respond immediately. At this point, we will open it up for some questions if there are any. Hopeful that there may be.
Yes, we actually have a bunch. The first one is, what do you do if you accidentally click a link in an email or think someone has been hacked?
Paul, could you please respond to that?
Absolutely, Ben. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you get the machine off the network. If it's a wired machine, pull the network cable. If it's a wireless machine, either physically power it down or get it to a location where it doesn't have a signal. The key component immediately following it is to know who to contact, know who to reach out to escalate the incident, be it email or a local machine malicious file landing on it. You should contact your IT department immediately. As I mentioned earlier in our use case, CTI offers incident response services, and the first step is preparation, and knowing who to call and who to reach out to at time of need is one of the most important things in that framework.
Great response, Paul. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is, does this protection work on mobile phones too, or just the desktop?
Kevin, could you respond to that, please?
Absolutely. So yes, it does work on mobile phones, tablets, anywhere any device that you're able to log into that email account, it'll work on said device. So Chromebooks, desktops, whatever it may be.
Great.
Thank you.
The next question is, sometimes I get spam text messages. Is that similar to what you're talking about?
Paul?
It's similar to emerging technology that cyber criminals are using today. In a situation like that, that's called smishing, SMS phishing. You want to avoid clicking on links with any text messages or URLs, and don't respond to anybody who you don't know. There are additional layers of security that we can implement on top of a mobile device management solution to help protect from smishing attacks and activities.
What's incredible about that, Paul, it just goes to show that the hackers are continually evolving, trying to stay ahead of the users and the organizations, because you always heard that you were somewhat safe on your mobile phones for whatever reason. but now they're figuring out a way to make you unsafe.
Great. The next question is, what happens on the fake login page after you enter credentials?
So what happens, and Kevin may shed a little bit more detail on this, but when Kevin created the malicious impersonation page, he actually had a URL that he embedded into the email. That embedded URL ties back to the tool that communicates with the threat actor, the cyber criminal, and provides them with the credentials. And Kevin, do you want to expand on that at all?
Absolutely. Ultimately, it's supposed to impersonate Microsoft as closely as possible, right? But it's not going to be 100% authentic. And in that, if you fall for something like that, and you're actually giving those credentials away, in some cases you'll actually see like a hey, thank you for submitting. You will receive an email shortly, or some type of fake notification letting you know that like everything is successful. When in reality, the attacker got everything that they were looking for.
Great. The next question is, what are some key points that can be used to educate employees to phishing attacks?
Some key components to understanding attacks. One is, I'm not sure if everyone noticed, maybe many of you did, but when the embedded URL, that dialog box showed up, it showed up from a different web link up in the browser menu. So you want to make sure that the information that you're about to select or commit to is coming from a legitimate site. Also, we've seen many compromises come in the form of what looks to be a senior leader in an organization, first name, last name, possibly grabbed from LinkedIn, but with an AOL email address. So you want to pay attention to who is in the to field from an email address perspective. Always be cautious of anyone asking for funds or transfers or gift cards or anything financially requiring, including information, anything specific to your organization. And one thing that's worked very well is if you suspect a phishing attempt from someone call them up and make sure you speak with them, understand if they sent it or not. In many cases, they haven't, but get verbal verification.
Great. Thank you, Paul. We do have a couple more. Do you provide the phishing service to test the users?
Yes, absolutely we do. And part of our cyber bundle offering includes phishing attempts disguised as impersonation, specific users within the organization, outside entities like banks and financial services, and as Kevin mentioned earlier, LinkedIn and other social media sites. We absolutely have a service that we can test and protect users based on their commits. And on average, on the first pass of a phishing exercise, 27% of users actually click on a bad link. So more than 1 out of 4 click on a suspect link. And over time, with phishing exercises and simulations, those numbers decrease. And one of the great things that Kevin mentioned earlier on was that the banner technology actually self-educates. When you see a red banner come in, it's considered suspect, and you can take action and notify the SOC if you feel it isn't. But in most cases, it's a suspect attack coming inbound to your email address.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Another one. There was a user outside the company that was known to one of my users. My user received an email, and all of a sudden, everyone in my company got the same message. How did that happen?
So one of the threat actor conditions is they send to everyone within the contact list. So if I have a contact list of, say, 1,000 people, once it hits my email address, the technology allows them to fan out and send to all of my contacts. That's very common without protection.
Great. And one last question. What is spear phishing, and how is it different than, say, regular phishing?
That's a great question. So spear phishing, is a little bit different than what Kevin described earlier, where they just got a person's email address and they were able to get the credentials based on impersonation. Spear phishing ties more into what Steven mentioned earlier about a threat actor sitting on a network for 197 days. And once they're on the network, they're watching the information transfer between C-level and other members of the organization, financially, human resources, and other. Imagine an administrative assistant that starts working for a CEO 3 weeks ago, and it's become evident that the CEO is taking a trip overseas. He's getting on a plane. We will get to that condition in the near future, hopefully. And an email goes out to the administrator assistant just before he gets on the plane, appearing to be from the CEO, saying, I know you're new to the organization. I'm in a rush. I'm getting on a plane. Please wire $300,000 to this account. I'm sure you're going to do a great job for me, and I really appreciate everything you've done for us so far. Gets on the plane. she wires the money. That's spear phishing.
And that's what happened to Barbara Corcoran's firm, correct? That's how her firm ended up sending up $250,000 or so to a hacker through email fraud. Before that, before I was educated on spear phishing, I thought that was when I was with my friends in the ocean behind me in Antigua, and we'd go into the ocean and we shoot at the big fishes with the spear gun. I thought that was spear phishing, but I have been educated from a cyber perspective. That closes our question and answers, Michael.
Yes,
Is there any more?
Nope, that was it.
Excellent. I want to thank everybody for your time. We appreciate you. Please stay safe. And thanks again for joining our webinar today.